Hi there, I'm Matt Keene. Welcome to Creating a Future We Want, the Evaluative Evolution series. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so glad that you're here. Oh my gosh, this is so great. And the cucumbers are here, and the peppers are here, and the tomatoes are here, and the eggplant, and the okra, and the arugula has gone to seed, and the lettuce is quite bitter at this point. But generally, everything is wonderful. So, the garden is wild. I think I'd like to argue that it's wild enough. In the first little video essay about this topic, I talked about a little bit about like wilderness, like the garden relative to wild, the wilderness. Okay, here gonna be sort of like the garden relative to tame, not wilderness. Not sure if there is a spectrum there or whatever, but if that's wilderness, then garden, then here we're sort of looking at the other end of things. We're interested in training to create a future we want in the Na, the accelerating coevolution of nature, humanity, and AI. It's gonna be wild. So there is a question, like, is the garden, the correct match, a good learning environment for learning how to create a future in the Na? So, nature. We hear a lot about the benefits. I've been to many conferences, for instance, and I may possibly have been speaking and mentioned some of the benefits, but often, perhaps on this particular topic, I am in the audience listening to, how nature can, boost your mood or improve mental health or do something, whatever the right thing is to do to your cortisol levels, and maybe it reduces anxiety, relieves stress on the immune system, gives you a feeling of peace and contentedness that was not present before an exposure to nature, before receiving the dose of nature. Now, I often hear, I have heard these things in many different contexts, right? The things I'm talking about it's generally evidence that's generated from science, as science is practiced today. And as science is practiced today, right, it's sort of about being in a very, very dark space, zero light, having a laser and pointing it at a wall. I've heard this before. I can't say who said it, so I'd love to give them credit, but I'm gonna sort of take credit. So pointing a laser at the wall, and like whatever you point it at is what you're learning about, right? And so that laser is only lighting up where you point it. You can't see anything else, so you only learn about that little dot. And as we know, science, oh my gosh, I remember reading something about in medical research or public health or something like that. Author named Green did this research. He was saying it's like 17 years from the research, coming to a finding to it actually being taught to students in a classroom. Whatever it was sounded insane and really unhelpful if you have the problem that was discovered by that scientific research. So, science sort of works like that. That's often the benefits I hear. If you take 17 breaths underneath of a tree near running water, then whatever, your stress is reduced. All wonderful things, and I do all of these things. Like, I will often go sit under a tree, even talk to it, give it a hug. Just ironically, but for fun too, and because it's not bad. It's not a terrible thing to do. I think I just swallowed a bug. So, these benefits of nature, right? We're talking about sort of personal health often, like the alleviation of stress, the amelioration of the pressures of modernity and our citified life, right? That research is also very useful for instance, urban planning, right? Where to put parks, how many parks, green spaces, exposure of the populace to nature, um, advocacy to humans. Like, oh, don't, you're in a cubicle all day or you live in a city, make sure you get out. It's good for you, that sort of thing. Justification is another reason I've often heard these things, like, maybe in nature conservation, I will hear, oh, here's the 82, particular benefits of nature to humans, like the utilitarian perspective of why it's good for humans to have nature. And then, of course, just fun research, people curious, finding out all sorts of things about the relationship between um, nature and human health. Are we at risk of just thinking of nature as another thing to put in a bottle, a pill to take, a prescription to give to people? Is that, sort of reducing of nature helpful to us? Yes, clearly it is helpful to us in many ways. For our particular purpose of learning how to create a future we want in the na, not sure it's the end. It might be the start to understanding something about why we're in the garden and things that are happening, that our relationship with the soil, the air, the garden as a whole, as a system, as an ecology. But these things that, as I started out saying, if this is the garden and this is wilderness, this is the garden and this is sort of what we're talking about today, we can't stop here. We need all of the wickedness to be a part of our learning and our conversation. So, does the garden, this is the question that I'm wrestling with, does the garden meet the criteria that we set forth for our training ground for how to create a future we want? I'm not sure what the criteria are. I'm not sure if the garden has all of the features that would help us to understand whether it meets the criteria. That's what all of this is about. Exploring what all those answers are. So is the garden a good match for the na? Well, we could ask some questions. What is our purpose? Create a future we want. What is the context, the na? What are we trying to learn or change? We're trying to create a future we want. So transition from transform present into future, or this ever emerging future, turning it towards our values and more coherent morality. That's a key term. That's going to come up a lot more. Moral coherence. So we want to learn to create a future in the na. In the garden, we do know some amazing stuff, like, wow, we can vision here. There was nothing here a few months ago, and now there's all of this life, all of this energy. We can create, we can practice, we can experiment, we can try out new praxis, we can develop our own deep praxis. We can test, we can fail safely, no falling into raging rivers. We can observe, we can adjust, we can adapt, we can wonder, we can experience awe. All of these things are going to be critical to creating a future we want. In the garden, we have access to, and it prompts us toward many of these things. I'm Matt Keene. Thanks for visiting Creating a Future We Want, the Evaluative Evolution series. See you soon.